Hello, esteemed gentlemen. Some people try to destroy you with shame, and then spend the rest of their lives watching you build a kingdom from the ruins they created. It's fascinating. Psychologists say that public shaming releases the same chemicals in the brain as physical pain. But when you try it on a Sigma male, the chemistry backfires. Instead of crumbling, he calculates. Instead of hiding, he observes. And while you're still celebrating your little victory, he's already 2 steps ahead, drafting the blueprint of a life that'll make your entire attempt look like amateur theater. The Sigma male doesn't need revenge. He lets reality do that job. He'll smile when you mock him, nod when you insult him, and somehow that calm expression will make you feel like you've just insulted a god in his own temple. Because here's the funny thing. When you try to shame a Sigma, it's like throwing dirt at fire. For a second, it looks like you're winning, until you realize you've only made the flames brighter. This is what happens when you try to shame a Sigma male, and why you'll end up regretting ever thinking he'd break. Number 1, he doesn't make you regret it loudly. He makes you regret it existentially. When a Sigma male is shamed, something quietly powerful happens. He doesn't explode, he doesn't cry out, and he doesn't seek revenge. He simply withdraws into himself, like a storm gathering strength in silence. People often mistake that silence for defeat, but that's the mistake that costs them later. The Sigma male processes humiliation differently. He translates it into insight. Every insult, every sneer, every attempt to make him feel small becomes data. Data about human weakness, insecurity, and the fragility of ego. And when he's done analyzing it, he rises, detached from the emotional noise that others drown in. The real regret for those who tried to shame him doesn't arrive immediately. It arrives later, quietly, like a ghost that won't leave. Because they'll watch him rebuild without them, advance without explanation, and shine without needing applause. There's a haunting in that realization, that your attempt to humiliate him didn't just fail, it defined your place beneath him. You become the background to his growth story, and he doesn't even mention your name. While you're hoping he's still wounded, he's already turned that pain into power. He grows in silence, and that silence becomes deafening when the world starts noticing him for the very qualities you once mocked. The same traits you ridiculed become the very things people now admire. And you're left with a strange kind of regret, not the regret of guilt, but of irrelevance. You didn't just lose his attention. You lost the right to ever be part of his evolution. There's no dramatic revenge, no public humiliation, no grand "I told you so." He doesn't even care enough to prove a point. That's what makes it sting deeper. Because the worst kind of payback isn't someone destroying you. It's them outgrowing you so completely that your attempt to hurt them feels laughably small in hindsight. The Sigma male's revenge is existential. You don't see it in his actions. You feel it in your own reflection. One day, you'll realize he moved on, built his peace, and never once looked back. And that's when the real regret begins. When you understand he didn't need to punish you. He simply became someone you'll never reach again. Number 2, he erases you from his emotional memory. That's the ultimate revenge. When a Sigma male erases you from his emotional memory, it's not an act of anger, it's an act of evolution. He doesn't block you, curse you, or wish you harm. He simply removes your presence from the internal world that once gave you importance. You stop existing where it actually mattered, in his mind. That's the kind of silence that can't be undone. It's not revenge in the loud, dramatic sense. It's the quiet deletion of your emotional footprint, the kind that leaves no trace, but carries the weight of finality. Most people underestimate what it means to be erased by someone like him. When he detaches, he doesn't just stop talking to you. He stops remembering you as someone who mattered. He no longer replays the moments, no longer analyzes the pain, no longer reacts to your existence. You become an unimportant file he deleted to free up space for something greater. And the irony is, while you're still thinking about him, still replaying the past, he's not even aware that you exist anymore. His peace has no vacancy for your memory. This kind of indifference hurts more than hate ever could. Hate still acknowledges that you have emotional weight. But indifference, the kind that Sigma males master, means you've been stripped of meaning. You can't fix it, can't apologize it away, can't provoke a reaction because there's no longer an emotional connection to manipulate. You're gone, not physically, but psychologically. It's the kind of disappearance that makes people realize they never had real control to begin with. What makes it powerful is that it's irreversible. Once a Sigma male's mind releases someone, there's no reset, no round two. He doesn't return out of nostalgia or weakness. He values his inner peace more than any closure you could offer. That's what makes this kind of silence the ultimate punishment, because it's eternal. You thought shaming him would make him crumble, but all it did was teach him detachment at a higher level. And now you're left chasing echoes in a place he's long abandoned. His revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, absolute, and final. The kind that leaves you haunted not by what he did, but by the realization that to him, you simply no longer exist. Number 3. He doesn't retaliate. He reprograms the battlefield. When a Sigma male is attacked or shamed, he doesn't react. He recalibrates. He doesn't fight fire with fire. He quietly changes the oxygen in the room. He studies the situation with surgical detachment and starts rearranging the social and psychological dynamics around him until your attack becomes irrelevant. While you're still busy defending your ego or trying to make him flinch, he's already dismantled the emotional framework that gave your insult power in the first place. He understands something most people never do. Retaliation keeps you trapped in the same game. So instead of playing defense, he changes the rules. If you mock him in front of others, he won't try to prove you wrong. He'll subtly shift how people see him through his calm, his logic, his quiet command of presence, until they start questioning why you even attacked him. Without saying a word, he makes your aggression look childish and your confidence look forced. That's psychological reprogramming at its finest. This is what makes shaming a Sigma male so frustrating for those who try. You can't defeat someone who doesn't live inside your emotional map. Every reaction you expect, anger, insecurity, denial, never comes. And the moment he refuses to react as predicted, your power collapses. You find yourself over-explaining, defending or trying harder to get a reaction, not realizing he's already taken control of the narrative. By the time you realize what's happened, the damage isn't his, it's yours. The crowd that once laughed with you now watches in silence, unsure why the victim looks stronger than the aggressor. That's the genius of a Sigma male's response. He never lowers himself to fight in the mud. He drains the swamp completely. And when the dust settles, your words, your energy, your entire attempt at dominance just hang there, meaningless, powerless, outdated. He doesn't just survive humiliation. He restructures reality until humiliation itself no longer applies to him. That's not revenge. That's evolution disguised as composure. Number 4. He turns your mockery into his study material. When someone mocks a Sigma male, they unknowingly hand him information, and he never lets information go to waste. He listens, not to defend himself, but to decode the motive behind your words. Every jab, every sneer, every sarcastic remark reveals more about you than it does about him. He studies your tone, your timing, the way your face tightens when you try too hard to make others laugh at his expense. In his mind, it's not an insult, it's field data. You're basically giving him a live demonstration of your insecurities. The Sigma male is a natural observer, detached but hyper-aware. So while others get emotional or reactive, he stays calm and starts connecting dots. He notices that you only mock him when you feel out of control. He catches that your humor hides fear, your arrogance hides fragility, and your need for validation exposes a deeper emptiness. What you meant to use as an attack becomes a psychological profile. And once he understands that profile, he can predict your moves like clockwork. What's unsettling is how effortlessly he does it. You think you're hurting him, but he's quietly mapping you out like a strategist reading a war manual. He learns what triggers you, what makes you seek approval, and what kind of silence unnerves you. And when he's done studying, you're no longer a threat. You're a pattern. And patterns are easy to manage, manipulate, or dismiss. That's why it's dangerous to underestimate a Sigma. His lack of reaction isn't weakness, it's data collection. You can't shame someone who's busy analyzing the psychology behind your need to shame him. While you burn energy trying to make him feel small, he's growing smarter, calmer, and more precise. By the time you realize he's figured you out, the power dynamic has flipped completely. He knows how to push your buttons without lifting a finger. He doesn't even have to get revenge. He just understands you so well that you can't touch him anymore. Your mockery made him wiser, and in the process, made you transparent. That's not losing an argument. That's being studied, decoded, and quietly defeated. Number 5. He exposes your powerlessness by remaining unshaken. When you try to shame a Sigma male and he doesn't flinch, something shifts, not in him, but in you. You expect your words to sting, your tone to rattle him, your performance to draw some visible crack in his composure. But when none of that happens, when he stands there unshaken, calm, and unreadable, the entire energy flips back on you. His stillness becomes a mirror, and suddenly you're forced to see how desperate your need for control really is. That's the quiet power of a Sigma male. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't defend himself, doesn't feed the drama. He just remains. And that simple act, remaining grounded when others try to destabilize him, exposes everything about the person attacking him. You start realizing that your attempt to humiliate him wasn't strength, it was insecurity disguised as confidence. You wanted a reaction because you needed proof that you could influence him. But his lack of response becomes proof that you can't. In that moment, you feel a strange kind of discomfort, the kind that comes from realizing you've lost control of the narrative. The more unbothered he looks, the smaller your efforts appear. You start talking faster, louder, trying to force a crack in his calm, but it only highlights your own instability. His silence becomes louder than any comeback you could give, and every second he stays composed, your authority erodes. What makes it sting even more is that his calm isn't arrogance, it's clarity. He's not pretending not to care. He genuinely doesn't. He's mastered emotional discipline to the point where your attempts to provoke him don't even register as a threat. That's when humiliation turns inward. You realize you've revealed your fragility in front of someone who never needed to prove a thing. His calmness becomes the lesson you didn't know you were being taught. Power isn't about control, it's about immunity. And when you try to shame a man who's immune to your approval, you don't destroy him, you expose yourself. Number 6. He doesn't forgive you. He outgrows you. So fast you become irrelevant. When you betray or try to shame a Sigma male, you expect one of two things, confrontation or forgiveness. But you get neither. What you get instead is distance. Not emotional distance that fades with time, but the kind that feels like you've been erased from the timeline of his life. He doesn't hate you, doesn't plot revenge, doesn't even give you the courtesy of closure. He simply outgrows you, and that's far more devastating than anger. The Sigma male's evolution is relentless. Once someone crosses him, he channels that pain into acceleration. He studies what went wrong, updates his perspective, and evolves past the emotional space where you still exist. While you're still rehearsing apologies or hoping for another chance to explain, he's already transformed into a version of himself that no longer needs, or even remembers, what you represented. You're trying to reconnect with someone who's not even standing in the same reality anymore. What hurts most is the speed of it. One day you think he's hurt, distant, maybe reflective. Then suddenly, he's untouchable, completely detached, unbothered, and moving with new purpose. He doesn't announce it or show off his progress. He just rises quietly, in ways that make your presence unnecessary. You'll notice the shift when your name no longer gets a reaction, when your message goes unanswered, when your attempts to fix things feel like trying to speak into a locked vault. That's the brutal truth about a Sigma male. Once he's done, he's done. There's no slow fade, no half-hearted forgiveness. He evolves out of the space where you thought you had importance. And because his growth is so silent, you don't even realize it's happening until you're completely irrelevant. He doesn't need to forgive you to move on. Forgiveness would require him to hold on to the memory of what happened, and that would give you power. Instead, he sheds the entire situation like old skin and keeps walking. By the time you come looking for closure, he's already living a new chapter, one where your name no longer fits. That's not bitterness. That's evolution at its most elegant, the kind that leaves you forgotten, not forgiven. Number 7. He teaches the world. What you tried to hide. When you try to shame a Sigma male, you think you're damaging his image, but all you're really doing is handing him the perfect story to teach others. He doesn't waste time defending himself or trying to clear his name. Instead, he transforms the experience into wisdom, using it as an example of how ignorance, ego, and manipulation operate in plain sight. What was meant to humiliate him becomes a powerful lesson, and the beauty of it is that the lesson isn't just for him. It's for everyone watching. Sigma males don't bury their pain. They dissect it. They extract meaning from chaos. When someone tries to disgrace them, they study the entire process, the motive, the method, the mindset, and then they expose it without bitterness, using calm precision. They'll speak about betrayal, hypocrisy, or deception, not as victims, but as observers of human behavior. And when people listen, they don't see a man who was shamed. They see someone who turned humiliation into higher understanding. That's the difference between being wounded and being wise. What makes it sting for the person who tried to shame him is that the story spreads, and they become part of it, not as the hero, but as the example. Without naming names, the Sigma male redefines what happened. He tells the story so powerfully that others see through the kind of behavior you displayed. You become the cautionary figure in his narrative, the one people recognize in their own lives and vow not to become. That's the kind of revenge a Sigma male delivers without trying. He elevates the conversation beyond personal pain and turns it into a mirror for everyone else to see. In doing so, he takes control of the narrative entirely. Your attack fades, but his insight stays, timeless, useful, respected. And while you're left hoping people forget what happened, they don't. They remember his wisdom, not your attempt at humiliation. You set out to destroy his reputation, but he ended up expanding it. You gave him material, and he turned it into mastery. And in the end, the only thing the world learns from your story is how not to be you. Number 8. He doesn't win. He redefines what winning is. When you try to shame a Sigma male, You assume he's playing the same game as everyone else, the one where reputation, popularity, and attention define who's ahead. But the Sigma male doesn't play for applause, he plays for evolution. While others chase validation like it's oxygen, he's focused on something quieter, deeper, and far more permanent: mastery over himself. That's why you can't beat him using society's scoreboard. He's not even on the field. You might think you've won because people laughed at your joke or sided with your story. But while you're celebrating that temporary applause, he's studying the mechanics of what just happened, what triggered it, why it mattered to you, and how little it actually matters to life's bigger picture. He doesn't need to repair his image because his self-worth was never rooted in image. His definition of winning isn't about who looks better. It's about who becomes better. To him, victory means staying unshaken when others crumble, staying self-aware when others lose themselves to ego, staying true when everyone else performs. It's an internal scorecard no one else can read. And that's what makes him untouchable. While you're obsessing over who won the argument or how many people agreed with you, he's already evolved beyond needing anyone's agreement. What makes the Sigma male so difficult to humiliate is that his sense of success doesn't depend on visibility. You can't shame someone who finds fulfillment in growth rather than attention. The moment you try, you only reveal how addicted you are to external approval, and that's when the imbalance becomes clear. You're loud, but shallow. He's silent, but deep. By redefining what winning means, he removes your power completely. You can't defeat someone who refuses to measure life by your metrics. He wins not by proving you wrong, but by making your entire definition of victory meaningless. And when you realize he's thriving without needing to win at all, that's when it hits. You were never his opponent. You were just a moment in his process of becoming untouchable. Number 9. He turns your gossip into his ghost story. When you gossip about a Sigma male, you think you're shaping how people see him, but you're actually doing the opposite. You're building his legend for him. Every word you speak with malice becomes fuel for the curiosity of others. You tell stories meant to stain his name, but instead, you paint him as the mysterious figure who walks through drama untouched. The more you talk, the more people start wondering what kind of man stays silent while others are so desperate to explain him. That's the strange power of a Sigma male. His absence speaks louder than your accusations. You're out there talking, ranting, and defending your version of the story, while he's nowhere to be found. That void creates tension, and tension breeds fascination. People start asking, "Who is this guy?" And before long, they're not seeing him through your bitterness. They're seeing him through their own curiosity. What you meant as slander becomes an aura of intrigue around him. The Sigma male understands this dynamic instinctively. He knows that gossip feeds off reaction, so he gives it none. No denials, no clarifications, no indirect posts, just silence. And in a world addicted to attention, that silence feels supernatural. You keep trying to drag him into noise, but he becomes the ghost that haunts it, untouchable, unbothered, and oddly compelling. People can't stop talking about him because he refuses to talk about himself. And that's where the tables turn. While you're trying to make people see his flaws, they start admiring his restraint. While you're gossiping to gain power, you end up exposing your obsession with someone who doesn't even acknowledge your existence. It's a subtle but brutal shift. The storyteller becomes the joke, and the ghost becomes the legend. Eventually you realize the damage you tried to cause only amplified his mystique. His quiet turned into charisma. Your gossip turned into promotion. And by the time people meet him, your version of the story no longer matters, because they've already decided he's everything you're not: calm, self-contained, and far too real to be reduced by words. Number 10. He never claps back. He builds back. When a Sigma male is attacked or ridiculed, He doesn't waste time clapping back. He gets to work. While others are busy defending their pride or crafting comebacks, he's channeling that energy into creation. He builds, quietly, consistently, and with purpose. And as what he's building starts to take shape, your words begin to shrink in significance. The same people who once laughed start watching in silence, because his results say what no argument ever could. That's the essence of the Sigma male's power. He doesn't argue with noise. He replaces it with proof. Every insult, every attempt to undermine him becomes construction material. You mocked his ideas? He turns them into a brand. You doubted his vision? He turns it into a movement. You tried to ruin his image. He creates a new one so authentic that it outshines the version you tried to destroy. By the time you realize what's happening, his success has already invalidated your entire narrative. What makes it sting is that he doesn't do it for revenge. He genuinely doesn't care about showing you up. He builds because it's his nature. Because growth, not validation, is his default mode. You're still living in the argument, but he's already building the legacy. And that's what makes your attempts to humiliate him so painfully irrelevant. He's too busy upgrading his reality to even notice your noise. People eventually see the difference. They remember who spent their time talking and who spent it working. His results speak for themselves, and your words start sounding like background static next to what he's achieved. The contrast becomes undeniable. You fought to be right, he focused on being effective. The Sigma male's silence isn't weakness, it's architecture. Every calm response, every refusal to engage, is a brick in the empire he's building. And when it's done, when his success stands tall and unshakable, your insults collapse beneath it. Not because he destroyed you, but because he built something so real that your words simply couldn't survive in its shadow. Number 11. He doesn't humiliate you. He lets reality do it. A Sigma male doesn't waste time trying to humiliate the people who tried to humiliate him. He knows that revenge handled by emotion is sloppy, and time always does a better job of exposing the truth. When you try to shame him, he doesn't fight back with words or schemes. He just steps aside and lets life take the wheel. Because reality, in his experience, has a perfect sense of irony. Those who lie eventually trip over their own fabrications, and those who mock others eventually become the punchline of their own arrogance. He knows this. That's why he doesn't interfere. He understands that people reveal themselves over time. The louder you try to paint him as weak, strange, or unworthy, the more your desperation becomes visible. He doesn't need to correct you. He knows your actions will do it for him. And when that happens, when the truth comes full circle, it's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, undeniable, and beautifully just. You'll find yourself standing in the very light you tried to manipulate, exposed by the contrast of who he really is versus who you said he was. What makes it sting even more is that he never rubs it in. He won't point out how wrong you were or demand an apology. He'll just continue existing, grounded and consistent, while your words decay on their own. His silence makes your downfall poetic, not because he designed it, but because he trusted truth to do its natural work. Sigma males understand that the universe doesn't need help balancing itself. Every false accusation, every attempt to shame carries a built-in expiration date. All he has to do is stay authentic long enough for reality to catch up. And when it does, the contrast between your noise and his calm is all it takes for everyone to see who really held power all along. In the end, you realize he never needed to humiliate you. You did that yourself, by underestimating someone who mastered patience, restraint, and truth. His greatest revenge isn't what he does to you. It's what life reveals about you while he stays perfectly still. Number 12. He disappears, then reappears unrecognizable. When a Sigma male disappears, It's never an act of defeat. It's transformation in progress. He doesn't retreat to lick his wounds or hide from judgment. He steps back to rebuild himself in silence. While everyone else is chasing validation, posting proof of progress, or demanding closure, he's in the shadows, reconstructing his mindset, recalibrating his energy, and redefining what he wants his next chapter to look like. He knows that true evolution happens where no one's watching. That's why when he finally reappears, he's not the same man you tried to shame. He's something sharper, quieter, and far more untouchable. People often mistake his absence for weakness. They think silence means surrender. But a Sigma's silence is like the night before a storm, calm, deliberate, and full of unseen movement. He disconnects from noise so he can rewire himself completely. By the time he returns, your insults, your opinions, even your memory of who he was, have no grip on him. You're still trying to confront the old version of him, not realizing that man doesn't exist anymore. And that's what makes it unsettling. You can't shame someone who's already evolved beyond the part of himself that cared. You can't guilt a man who's learned to detach his identity from the past. His rebirth invalidates your attack, because your entire attempt was aimed at a version of him that's been buried, not in pain, but in progress. The transformation is quiet, but undeniable. His energy shifts, his focus sharpens, his presence feels different, grounded, untouchable, almost ethereal. The same people who once mocked him start to feel uneasy around him, sensing that he's no longer accessible in the same emotional language. That's when regret begins to sink in. You didn't just fail to break him. You helped build the version of him that no longer acknowledges your existence. The Sigma male's power lies in his ability to vanish and evolve without announcing it. When he reappears, he's no longer looking for closure. He is closure. You tried to shame a man who was still becoming, and now you're left realizing that your words never reached the man he finally became. In the end, the Sigma male doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. That's what makes him so unstoppable. Every insult, every attempt to shame him, every calculated move to make him feel small, becomes fuel for his quiet evolution. He doesn't fight back with noise. He fights back with transformation. You can't humiliate a man who's not controlled by image. You can't break someone who sees through your intentions before you even finish speaking. The Sigma male's strength lies not in how loud he roars, but in how deeply he grows in silence. He moves through life like a silent storm, unseen, underestimated, and misunderstood, until the results of his resilience speak for him. The same people who tried to drag him down eventually end up quoting him, studying him, or silently wishing they'd never crossed him. He doesn't get even, he gets elevated. His revenge isn't in destruction. It's in becoming so evolved, so composed, and so self-defined that the world has no choice but to respect what it can no longer understand. What's truly poetic is that the Sigma male never sets out to teach anyone a lesson, yet life uses him to deliver some of its harshest ones. Those who tried to shame him end up learning that silence isn't weakness, it's control. That indifference isn't coldness, it's freedom. And that walking away isn't defeat, it's dominance. The Sigma male's existence itself becomes a mirror, showing others the difference between performing strength and embodying it. So if there's one truth that wraps all this together, it's this. You don't win against a Sigma male. You only reveal who you are while he continues becoming everything you can't. His calm dismantles ego. His growth replaces revenge. His evolution is the echo that keeps reminding you what real power looks like. Quiet, patient, and completely self-contained. If this spoke to you, if you respect the calm power of the Sigma mindset, then don't just watch and move on. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about the part that hit you the hardest, because this isn't just a story about a Sigma male. It's a reminder that real strength never needs to shout. It simply becomes.